Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by PrizePicks.
Welcome to another Pucks with Haggs podcast powered by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. This is the 171st episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Thanks as always for listening. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns for the Boston Sports Journal after every Bruins game. I do a weekly Q&A with the subscribers as well. So subscribe and get yourself a membership to the Boston Sports Journal as well. With me today, I've got longtime friends and colleagues, Mick Colageo and Mark Divver. Boys, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Now, Mark, New England Hockey Journal, I know is one place that you are writing for. Anywhere else you want to plug?
My weekly Providence Bruins roundup is on Rinkside, Rhode Island, every Sunday, Monday, maybe Tuesday if I'm slow, but Rinkside, Rhode Island.
And definitely check out Rinkside, Rhode Island. It's the best place to find out anything that's going on with the P Bruins and with the Bruins talent pipeline. Mick, please plug anywhere you'd like to plug as well.
I write for the seasonal issues of the Hockey News, things like the Money Power issue, the Prospects issue, the Yearbook on the Bruins, and also have a Rink Wrap blog that I link to on X and Facebook on game nights.
Awesome. Check all of that out, guys. Let's give a little love also to our sponsor real quick. PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right. Mark, let's get into this 6-3 loss to the Ottawa Senators after good wins over the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning for the Boston Bruins. Good response coming out of the trade deadline. I think the cages were properly rattled. And they had two really good efforts. And, they changed up the mix. Some of the players they brought in have played pretty well. It's been a mix of things that happened in those two games that they won. But then there's the step back in this game with a kind of a must-win game if they really want to make the playoffs against an Ottawa Senators team that they're chasing and a team that they need to beat if they want to show that they're playoff ready. Biggest things that stuck out to you about this loss, what you were left with after watching it, as the way it went down. Obviously, the whole team was bad in the first period, but what was your overall impression or take from that game last night?
Well, I like the response after they fell behind there in that awful first period. That could have turned into a 7-1 or 8-1 or something like that, which we've seen this year a couple times.
Especially on the road. Yep.
Especially on the road. The new guys are growing on me. I've never been a Middlestat fan, really.
Yeah.
I've never thought Joki Harju was very good, to be honest.
Yep.
The Russian, whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce.
Kuznetsov?
Kuzi.
We're going to call him
If you say so.
Kuzi. The Kuz.
I knew virtually nothing about him before I got here. I like those guys. Last night, I liked them in the first few games here that we've seen them. I think Middlestat maybe on the soft side a little bit, or at least not, he's no Charlie Coyle when it comes to battles and stuff like that, but I like the skill that he brings. Joki Harju, I think, has been, pretty good so far, playing with Zadorov. So I've liked what I've seen from him. And the Russian, I think, now that's the guy, I was told that's who Boston wanted in that trade. That's the guy they wanted. And the position Boston is in right now regarding prospects and young players with upside, that was a smart move, or at least it looks like a smart move here a few days after the deadline, that targeting a guy with upside that can maybe develop into at least a serviceable NHL player, maybe a little more than that, with the speed and skill that he shows. I think they a trade like that, they need more of targeting guys that I wouldn't call him a distressed asset, but guys who maybe haven't lived up to what their previous team thought they would be, and maybe coming to Boston, the Bruins can squeeze more out of those guys like that. So that's my takeaway from last night. I don't think you want to win last night's game. I think you want to get a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And last night moved them one step closer to that. So squeezing into the playoffs, as a last team in, or whatever you want to call it, that's not going to get them anywhere. They'll get blitzed in the first round, and that'll be it. So that's my take on last night.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I definitely, each time they win a game, you kind of are left with, man, they really could use that top 10 pick. They could use a lottery first round pick and that kind of talent that they could bring in. I mean, if they're going to get a number one center that's eventually going to be a Patrice Bergeron replacement, that's how they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to be able to sign a guy like that. I don't think they're going to be able to trade for a guy like that. I think they have to identify that guy, get a really good high first round pick, and then select that like stud franchise center. So yeah, I agree with you. There is some benefit, I would say, probably for guys like Lowry, maybe Patra, some of the younger guys to, experiencing the playoffs again and getting in then, though Lowry did that last year as well. So that's minor, though, compared to the importance, I think, franchise-wide of getting a high first-round pick and having that be part of the centerpiece of this retool is being able to bring in a player with some real high-end talent. And I agree with you. Kuzi and Middlestat, I think their speed and their skill level is an upgrade over some of the players that they had, and it's very apparent watching, especially Middlestat, watching him fly through the ice, middle of the ice with the puck, crossing over, going into the zone with speed. Like we haven't seen a lot of that this year, and seeing that was eye-opening. It's different than a lot of what we've watched this season, and I think the people that have been critical about the skating and the skill level of this Bruins roster prior to the trade deadline. There's some ammunition there when you watch a couple of guys come in and show flashes of it and instantly, I think, raise the level of play. Mick, any thoughts you had from last night before I get into like my biggest takeaway?
I think the biggest difference was in the opponent, and the opponent was determined. Whereas I thought Florida was way too comfortable Tuesday night in Boston. I thought that they felt like they could toy with the Bruins. They weren't even doing their hard-arounds to hem the Bruins in. They were passing the puck like they're on a 5-on-5 power play, and they were generating scoring chances. You could tell that they were really just kind of like thinking, okay, we'll win this game by as many goals as we want, but right now 2 feels comfortable based on how these guys play. And then Pasta did this amazing thing where he just went to the net and stepped and tripped over a stick that he spotted, targeted, and tripped over and got a penalty, a sympathy penalty. They score again. They never look back. Then Zadorov and Bennett, and the whole thing is like people want to go buy 91 jerseys after this. And I'm thinking, holy hell, did they actually see this game? Florida was toying with them, and then they quit. They absolutely coasted, and the Bruins made them pay for it. Last night, it was the other way around. Ottawa came out storming in the first period, asserted their superiority, and the Bruins were overwhelmed. They're a banged-up team, missing key components, and they were no match for these guys, and Swayman did not have a great game to help them out. And so it was over before it started. And so I'm taking whatever progress I saw from the team concept later in the game as being more of a, well, Ottawa led 4-0. They took their foot off the gas, I'm not saying none of the good things would have happened. And here's my other thing about good things. If we look back to all of us have been on the Bruins for many years now. And if we look back to the last time, it was the Lewis year, was the last year we had garbage time in the regular season. So in the year before that. And if there were feel-good moments, whether it's when they brought in, traded Sergei Samsonov and got Marty McGinnis in the lineup, and I was like, hey, remember McGinnis? He's a pretty good player, or was it him? I can't remember if it was him. Maybe it was somebody else, and I'm confusing myself right now. But bottom line is, when you get to the garbage time moments where everybody knows that you're way on the wrong side of this bubble, and you start saying, okay, I see chemistry. I see the guys coming together. I see this. I see that. If I look back at those years and look at how they did, what they did to fix the team going forward, did any of that wind up mattering in the big picture of the team's trajectory over the next 3 or 4 years? No, it didn't. And so to me, it's like, yeah, do you want players who will rally around one another and play for one another? Yes, those are the kind of players you want. But how much stock do I put in what anything I saw from the Florida game or the Tampa game? None. Last night is much more of what I've expected to be the main body of work for the rest of the regular season, which is good for the franchise because they are overmatched. And like Mark said, they're not going to do anything if they somehow found a way to the playoffs. They'd have to run the table and hope. I don't see it. Now, as far as individuals go, yeah, that burst of speed by Husnudinov was something. And it was quite a finish, and it was something that was kind of like, ooh, I wonder if we'll see more of that. And Middlestat, it's funny. I think the Bruins look at him the way they looked at Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, guys who haven't been potential achievers in their career to this point. They think that they can be the team that gets this player to a higher level of game. And Middlestat is not a skinny runt. He's not tall though, but he is a pretty muscular kid. If he's pretty fit. And so I think it's pretty interesting to see what he does now that he gets into the critical stages of his career that are really going to define who he is as a player and what his career legacy will be. And maybe the Bruins got him at the right time. It's a gamble, but to say, okay, we're going to see what you got and see if we can bring you to a new level and help you achieve what you're looking for in your career and what we're looking for out of you. That's an intriguing acquisition. So Yoki Haru was solid in the Four Nations. He was.
He's been good.
I think he's been really
good.
Calmed things down back there for them, giving them a veteran.
Yeah. Not flashy, just very solid. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Like he's the kind of D-man you're not noticing much. Yeah, which is good for him because it means he's just going out and making plays and doing a good job and not doing things like Parker Weatherspoon on that one shift where he was an absolute disaster, where he couldn't keep the puck in, then started fumbling it in the neutral zone, and before you know it, it's in the back of their net. And I'm not saying that to dog Parker Weatherspoon because I know he's doing the best that he can, but you can't play those kind of guys on a regular basis and expect to have sustained success and a really high level of play. He's a good 7th D-man if he's playing.
I like him as a third pairing guy.
Yokoharu looks like a legit top 4 defenseman.
But I would say that he's very solid and he doesn't feel the need to play the entire game on his front foot. Whereas Wotherspoon always takes the gray area from a point of aggression. That's how he has to play to punch above his weight for the style of game he brings. And he gets some success out of that and can add some things to your team if he's in a protected situation. Yoki Haru does have that capability to play up and keep it calm. Andrew Peak, here's a guy with that Carlo gap now that is definitely, a bull in a china shop out there who's tries to play with structure and prioritizes defense, but he's very aggressive in how he does it. Yoki Haru is the first guy back there they've had in a while who's really calm. And I think that they need that. So I agree with you that that's a good pickup by them. It's something that they kind of need to stabilize because they have too many guys who lean toward chaos otherwise.
Yeah, Yoki Haru is playing like so many before him. When they get traded or signed away from the Buffalo Sabres, they are playing like they got freed from jail. And all of a sudden, their game goes up about 3 notches. Taylor Hall, it was like that with the Bruins. Now we're seeing it with Yoki Haru. I think it's a phenomenon that you see around the league where they're so happy to be out of the Buffalo Sabres that they all of a sudden start playing, at their highest level of capability. But the one thing, and I would say also about Middlestat, I think part of what he brings to the table and what he's brought to the table is the passing and the playmaking on the power play is really helped. He sees plays and he makes small little skill plays on the power play that really, and keeps the flow and the puck movement going that really helps on the power play. Yeah. And he needed a player like that, and he's helped out quite a bit. But my biggest takeaway from last night, and the thing that I asked myself after watching that game last night, and I've thought it a little bit this year, but not as apparent as it was in my face last night, was did the Bruins make the wrong choice with goalie? Did they get rid of the wrong goaltender? And I hadn't wanted to really ask that question, and I've been a big Swayman backer. But like, to see the way this year has played out, to see the way Swayman's approach to the contract negotiations really played a big part in submarining this whole season, to see the .896 save percentage that he's had this year, where he's been, had pockets where he's been okay, but for the most part has really not given them good goaltending and has exposed a lot of the flaws that were on that roster. And then to see last night, just, he was bad in the first period. Like, the whole team was bad, but he was bad too. One goal, that first goal, that turnaround shot he had to look at that snuck in his leg pads, I thought was a soft goal. He had one play where he was trying to play the puck behind the net and like flubbed it, and it turned into a puck in the back of his net. Like, he was just not good in that game. And there's been too many times where I think he's been that way. There was another play on that one-timer where he didn't even get over to the other post. It looked like he just kind of fell down, and he just didn't look good. And at the other end, you have Linus Ullmark, who, like, this year has battled injuries. He's missed time. Like, he hasn't been, like, phenomenal either. But he makes that save on Mason Lowry. That's the difference in the game, I thought. And it really was stark to me how good Ullmark was in that game and how he's helped leading the Senators to the playoffs for the first time, versus how bad Swayman was, that he was yanked after the first period. And now we've seen a little bit of a body of work forming that Swayman, when he's started like 3 or 4 games in a row, is not as good in the third or fourth game in a row. And maybe that heavy workload that you would have as a number one it wears him down. So maybe you shouldn't have paid him $8 million to be a number one guy when he'd never proven it. And now you're starting to figure out that he's not going to be able to play 60, 65 games if you're paying him that much. So, like, my biggest takeaway was just the goaltending situation. And, the Bruins have painted themselves into a corner with Swayman. He's their guy now. But did they choose the right guy? Did they make the right choice? Should they have, probably could have gotten a lot for Swayman coming off those playoffs as a young goalie that was a restricted free agent? Should they have decided to keep with Ullmark instead and trade him? And are we seeing now the consequences of making the wrong choice? Mark, your thoughts on the goaltending situation?
I think the Bruins have there's too many holes in the boat to worry about the goaltending at this point. I think they've made their choice. There's no going back on it now.
Well, that's true. Hindsight is 20/20. I will admit that.
And I'm comfortable with the choice. Yeah, he's had a bad year. If we're sitting here a year from now and he still has a save percentage below 900, then yeah, then there's trouble. But Linus Ullmark, let's see how far he takes Ottawa in the playoffs.
Yep.
Can he even show up for a 7th game without some damn injury that keeps him out? Let's see. Last night, unbelievable save, and he's they wouldn't be in the race probably without him this year. But let's see where he takes it at this point. So.
And to your point, Mark, it's not even the injuries, he just hasn't played well really in the playoffs either. Like, he's looked out of sorts. He's looked like he's trying to do too much. Like, he's looked like mentally he's not where he needs to be. Like,
he's looked like a guy who's overwhelmed by the moment, which is not what you want in your goalie in the playoffs. So, like I said, I'm okay with the choice they made, and now it's I think Swayman will bounce back next year. I don't know if, to what extent, I couldn't say, but I think he'll be better next year, and we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair, and I do agree with you. I think getting back, first of all, the experience of kind of being the guy this year, the number one guy, the mental and physical rigors of it, the challenges of it, going through that for the first time, being thrown into it where he missed training camp, like having a full training camp, having a normal off season, having everything go back to the way that he's used to. I agree with you. He should be better next year. And I would expect him to be a lot better. I would expect him to be like at his best, also motivated to kind of bounce back from the year that he's had. Cause I'm sure he knows just as well as anybody else, how much his struggles and his choices and the things that happened this year played into, what we saw on the ice and what we saw happen with this team. Mick, your thoughts just on the goaltending situation and just, watching last night where I think it was one of those games where it pulls into focus because it's Ullmark and Swayman out there and because, one goalie was playing really well and the other one
Yeah,
wasn't.
it was definitely a bad juxtaposition for the Bruins last night. I do agree with Mark that not all precincts have reported, and I was terribly intrigued before the choice was made as to what might be on the table for Swayman coming from, say, a team like Edmonton, or before their goaltending had straightened itself out and they made their run. At that time, It was really intriguing to me to what might be coming from them around trade deadline time, what might be on the table. And because do you want to, it's a philosophical question, but do you want to have one goalie that you heap so much on, a Roberto Luongo type, who plays 1,000 games, and if he never has the right perfect team in front of him, might never win? And then you say, did you make the right choice? And even if the guy goes to the Hall of Fame, whereas you could have a guy who battles for his position, or you could have a situation that's more, 60-40, and you could have a guy that, in that way you can spend money on a guy who's better than a viable backup, so that you have an option if he does get an injury. Teams win that way too, so it's never the road to the Stanley Cup is not paved in one way where it concerns goaltending. So I never really had a strong opinion as to who it should be. I just felt like they were in a point where their elite goaltending, for whatever reason, they were both really solid at the same time. In those 2 years that they both played great, they made the Bruins look like a better team than they were. Both of those seasons.
Yep.
And
they hit some flaws.
And this year, Swayman came in average at best because of what he had gone through. Korpisalo was actually pretty good. The Bruins, they weren't good enough to save the Bruins from themselves. And they just had a perfect storm of other problems that Monty couldn't outrun. Joe Sacco got his bump, but then the reality hit that they couldn't score. And until Pasta really got hot and Marchand started finding some stride, then it just wasn't there for them. And then that petered out and they sprung more leaks. And then we got the trade deadline decision. And now, what happens from here on in, I just care more about how they are with each other as teammates and the performances. Yeah, I mean, you want to see Swayman get on a run here and inspire some confidence that they did make the right choice when you go into next year. I remember when Peter Laviolette took over for Paul Maurice during the 03-04 and the Carolina Hurricanes were out of the playoffs. They went on a run. They didn't make the playoffs, but that set them in a good stead for when the NHL came back from lockout with roster tweaks. They became a Stanley Cup team. And it would be nice to see some Bruins pop during this time that we have left. And Swayman needs to be one of those guys.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll close this part of the discussion off just with a tweet from 16_Matthias that said, the Ullmark trade is our Marc-Andre Fleury moment. Huge mistake going with Swayman over Ullmark. You always go with ability over talent when it comes to keepers. I don't know what going with ability over talent means, because I feel like that's the same thing.
May I take a swing at that?
Maybe Matthias is Swedish and he's one of Ullmark's friends, and that's why he's tweeting this out.
He doesn't say that Ullmark is a more evolved, crafty competitor, whereas Swayman is being pictured by our social media tweeter there as a raw, phenomenal talent who is yet to harness his goods.
Yeah, well, and I would say Ullmark is definitely a better goalie when it comes to playing the puck and situational stuff. Like he almost did last night. But let's take a break real quick before we further discussion. Let's talk about our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super simple. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite hockey players with players from baseball, basketball, esports, and so much more. Here's my picks for this week. Ryan O'Reilly with over 9.5 face-off wins. Connor McDavid with over 22.5 minutes of time on ice. Mo Seider with more than 1.5 shots on net. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks also offers Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the PrizePicks app and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's go with another tweet. This is from Bees603. And they said, wow, maybe Marchand wasn't the problem. Felger is such a clown. And this is in reference to...
Are you kidding me?
This is in reference to Felger taking victory laps when the Bruins won the first two games after the trade deadline, saying, see, Brad Marchand was a problem in the locker room and a problem in the dressing room, and now they're playing much better hockey without him. He was the whole issue. And he pointed to a couple things that happened this year as Brad Marchand, like being some kind of cancer in the locker room. And now the Bruins were, going to go on a playoff run because they traded their captain. Mick, your thoughts on Felger doing victory laps and capitalizing on something that he knew was going to be short term, so he had to say it after those first two wins to make sure he puffed his chest with the "see I'm right" thing, and just people even thinking that Marchand was some kind of an issue here. If the Bruins were willing to go 3 years and $6.3 million for a 37-year-old guy, clearly they wanted to keep him at a certain cost. It ended up not working out. But I wouldn't for a second subscribe to any notion that guy was a problem in the locker room.
When that shit started, I went to EEI, and anybody who knows me knows going to EEI, unless Mike Milbury's doing his morning interview, a razor, then that ain't what I'm doing. So, that's what I did. And so that's how annoying that I was like, come on guys, this is ridiculous. You know what? Where are they going to be when this all plays out and the Bruins go back to where the media there, the people who live in the weeds are doing their time at Warrior and talking to guys on off days and being with the daily grind of covering the Bruins. Where are they going to be? They're going to be kind of like laughing and forgetting and off to somewhere else after they just can't stand the idea of harmony. And because it's bad for talk radio. That's my take on that.
It's true. They do not like harmony. And the other thing, Mick, is you go after all the great players on all the teams. That's how you get the ratings. That's how you get people talking. Is like you go after the biggest targets. And Brad Marchand certainly was one of them this year. And frankly, the Bruins have been so good for so long that it was hard for them to really dig into anything controversy-wise, but the fact that they struggled this year, I think, opened the floodgates to start speculating.
In so many
about
ways,
everything.
too.
Mark,
so many ways.
I know your idea or your notion that Marchand was some kind of problem, and that's why they traded him.
Well, that's patently ridiculous. And I'll defer to Sean Thornton when it comes to Felger. Back in the day. But honestly, those guys are very entertaining on the radio, but I hit the button as soon as the word Bruins is spoken. Okay?
Yep.
It's not worth my time. And it's not entertaining. Most of it is just stupid.
I was telling Fluto this a couple years ago. It's like you get mad because they never talk about the Bruins on the radio. Then they do, and now you're even worse.
Yeah. Right.
You're go back to not talking about the Bruins.
Blaming Marchand or whatever came up only a couple days after they spent a long time, I think, because I switched the channel, but long time touting the Crosby and Marchand to Colorado. It was guaranteed to happen. It was a days old bad rumor, and they ran with it.
It was juicy. It was a juicy rebound.
Hey, I will say though, Like, I first of all, I want to get your thoughts, Mark, in general on Marchand getting traded, and because I don't think I've talked with Mick about it. I don't think I've talked with you about it. Just on him getting dealt and sort of the way it went down, and just this whole trade deadline deciding to do what they did. But the Marchand one in particular, I think, is obviously one that, and like at the end of the day, it's probably going to be for a 2028 first round pick, which, you're not going to see dividends for this Marchand trade for probably 5 years, and you're trading away like one of your most iconic players, one of your last shred to the 2011 Cup team, one of the guys that, like, at the end of the day, right, when you're a professional sports team, you want players that people will pay money to watch play. That's the basic bottom line of the business. And they just traded away one of the players that is at the top of the list for Bruins fans of somebody they wanted to pay watch play. One of the iconic players of his generation, one of the most recognizable. He's the one that goes on TNT and yucks it up with Biz and all those guys all the time. Like, you lose a lot business wise when you trade a guy like Brad Marchand. And I also wonder, after talking to some people, how much the signing of Elias Lindholm impacted what Brad Marchand was asking for. And looking at that guy and saying, if you're going to pay that guy that, you better pay me this. I have a feeling that had a lot to do with what happened and how it went down and what Marchand was looking for and sort of the hard stance in contract negotiations. And that comes back to sort of a little bit of blame going at the Bruins front office for overpaying for that guy and losing one of your other players because you did that.
Well, I like a lot of people, I'm not in favor of paying people for past performance. It's future performance is what you want.
Yep.
But in this case, I think you make an exception and you give 63 the money and you give him the term and you live with it. You drive a hard bargain, sure, but you cut, if it comes down to the dollars and cents, cut the money someplace else, not there.
This is how we treat our all-time greats.
I think that, and the next couple, you don't know how the next couple of years are going to play out, but they could be rough, and you could need, his influence in the locker room, and as the face of the franchise or one of the faces of the franchise, you need a guy like that to, kind of ease the way through this rebuild, reload, whatever you want to call it. So I get you don't want to come away at the end of the year with nothing for a guy like him, but I wish they would have extended themselves there and given him the money, given him the years, or at least come closer in terms of the money. I don't know about Lindholm. I never thought of it that way, but it certainly makes sense.
I don't know. I have a hard time.
I mean, I could see I could see a player, a competitive player, looking at that and saying, if you're going to pay that guy this, I better get that, or I better get close to that. You should be paying me more, especially with a guy that's taken cuts and is taking less. When he goes out and he takes less, then all of a sudden you see you giving something more to a guy that you feel like is not as good a player as you are. Like, I could see any competitive athlete looking at that and having some kind of issue with it, or at least something they're going to bring up in a contract negotiation. Like, to your point though, Mark, like, if it truly played out the way some people are reporting it as, that he had a face-to-face with Don Sweeney and he said, I'll meet you in the middle. I'm at 7.5, you're at 6.3. Let's, meet in the middle there and get it done. If that happened, the Bruins should have gotten that done. Like, you don't lose your captain and one of your most iconic players for $600K a year for 3 years. Like, that's just foolish. And I really hope that's not what happened. But at the same time, you also have to wonder from Bruins management side, did they feel like they had to draw a line and not cross it because they gave so much and they crumbled with the Jeremy Swayman one whole different situation because the goalies were gone and they kind of were over a barrel and had to sign him to whatever he was demanding because Ullmark was gone and they only had Korpisalo. But you wonder if there was, Don Sweeney felt like he needed to draw a line in the sand and not go past it because of the way that other negotiation had gone.
And in terms of Lindholm, Marchand, the king of chirps, if he ended up with less than Lindholm, I could see guys all over the league giving him the business in every game about,
oh yeah,
Marsha, you're making less than this guy?
Yeah.
This guy.
Yeah. Yes.
That would hurt. That would hurt.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Mick, your thoughts on all of
this? Had a
this?
bad giveaway last night. He had the puck behind his own net, facing the boards. I think it was a penalty kill, and he was trying to decide what to do with it. And he didn't see a teammate here. He didn't see a teammate there. And 2 Ottawa guys came in and took the puck from him. And I think it wound up being in the net. And so it was just kind of like another moment where he hasn't become one of those feel-good stories during garbage time. You would like that for him as well.
He did make a nice. Did make a nice one-touch pass to Kuzi to set him up for that.
Yeah,
goal that he scored, though I will say that.
Okay,
that was a nice
I'm
play.
happy to chalk that one up. So yeah, there's just a lot there with him as far as that goes. I guess the reason I can't take the leap to Lindholm from Marchand's context is if you're the captain of the team, the last thing you want to do is send the message to management that you want them to make their decisions based on anything other than how they see you. And you're a legacy player, and it's, if I was going to say anything about money and deals and other deals and this and that, I'd be saying, hey, I left a lot of money on the table to stay here and help this team, and I feel like I should be treated well here. I should be treated accordingly. And you can't give me it all back now. I don't have enough years left in my career to get it all back. But I just feel like I felt the way Mark does, that it's just about Marchand, and it's just about his situation that's unlike anybody else's that they have to deal with right now. And I'm sure that Marchand has brought up to them, hey, isn't the cap going up? So it just seems to me like, oof, and the Bruins are a synergy team. They go from Charlie to Cam to Donnie to Evan, and they do things together, and it's been a very successful management group because of that. And I think that they have a pipeline, and all things are on the table, all things are under consideration. And I think that in some ways it could cripple their sensibility to certain moments where you just have to have that person who can see, oh, this situation, I recognize this is that, we have to do this. And I don't think the Bruins are like that. Everything goes through all the way up and down the table.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a franchise that, saw Bobby freaking Orr walk out the door, okay? They traded Phil Esposito. They traded Ray Bourque, right? I mean, time after time over the last many decades, cornerstone, beloved players have been traded, left for free agency, whatever. I'm probably leaving somebody out there on that pantheon of departures.
Joe Thornton.
This is how they do business. Even before the Jacobs took over. Harry Sinden walked out the door for God's
That's
sake.
the grand irony of Bruins hockey is the Bruins gave up 4 goals a game in that 7-game series that there's the Ken Dryden Legacy Series in between their 2 Stanley Cup years of 70 and 72. But the reality is they gave up 4 goals a game to the Montreal Canadiens in that series. And the reason is they got out-coached. Montreal made a coaching change during the season, fired Claude Ruel, brought in Al McNeil, and they tightened it up. And even without Serge Savard because of injury, they wound up winning the Stanley Cup that year with an old team and some young kids mixed in. It was a weird year, and the Bruins were a Humpty Dumpty, and they got knocked off because they the inmates would run in the asylum, and the players were playing pond hockey because they were overconfident, and they got schooled by some proud hockey players. And
then a couple of years later, they cheaped out on the coach. They had
That's
Bep
right.
Whittlein, the immortal Bep Whittlein,
Yeah.
behind the bench, opposing Fred Shearer.
That was lost.
Stanley
Yeah,
Cup
I
final.
agree with you. That was bigger than Perron versus Gilbert.
So I mean, if you cheap out on some of these deals, it blows up in your face. It
could be petty things,
not just to the Bruins.
They didn't have Harry Simmons because they lowballed him.
Yeah.
I love when Mick and Mark start talking about stuff that happened before I was even born.
It's still fresh in my mind.
So like that.
That's right.
This throwback moment was brought to you by Mick Colageo and Mark Divver right there. I appreciate that.
Run
guys.
your game.
Beb Quidlin's name. I have not heard Beb Quidlin's name.
Hey, his legacy is, I think, he's
time.
like the youngest NHL player in history, something like that. Like 16, maybe?
Yeah.
And another thing about that is, so they fire him, they bring in the next cheap guy, the next cheap hire.
Yeah.
It's Don Cherry, and that turns out to be a grand slam.
Anybody see that
you never
show
know.
on? I think Amazon Prime had it. It was a story of Don Cherry. It was like a. It was
the Canadian
I
one.
saw it. It was
I heard
awesome.
it was good though.
Oh, the way they did Eddie Shore was fantastic. Eddie Shore nicknamed
I'm gonna have to
Madagascar.
watch that.
He's on bend your knees, Madagascar.
Eddie Shore. There's another one, Eddie Shore, before my time even, but he didn't finish his career with the Bruins.
Yep.
So.
Well, to wrap all that up, though, thank goodness they didn't do that to Patrice Bergeron. They had the good sense to not actually do that with him, and he went out. Like, it was disappointing in the playoffs, but he went out as a lifelong Bruin, and that's absolutely the way it should have been. Because, the amount of uproar that's gone on from the Bruins fans with Marchand getting traded, it would have been like times 100 if they had traded 37 at any point during his Bruins career. So at least they had the good sense.
The other
not
side
to
of this
do
coin
that.
is when Cap Raider was still scouting for the Sharks and sitting with us above the Zamboni gates, he used to yell at me, "Don't fall in love with your players." A lot of people make that mistake.
There you go. That's true. Shout out to Cap Raider. All right, boys, thank you very much. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Mark, Mick, thank you very
Always
much for
a pleasure,
joining us
guys.
today.